You guys are the ones that make this place special. You guys are the ones that make this place rock. You guys are the ones that make this place work on Sunday. So it is a privilege and an honor to join you and spend this evening with you. It is also my pleasure to introduce the Detroit Lions management and head coach participating in tonight's Members Summit event. Please join us in welcoming Lions team president Rod Wood. General Manager Bob Quinn. And head coach Tim Caldwell. If you guys had checked the screen, you would know that you are very much a part of this evening. If you would like to submit a question, we will invite you to do that. Just to brush up for the audience, if you would like to submit questions for tonight's Members Summit panel, here's how you do it. Text your question to this number, 415-335-7783. It's 415-335-7783. Indicate which member of our panel your question is for, your name, your hometown. Once again, 415-335-7783. Depending on your service provider, standard message and data rates may apply. Okay, get that in there. All right, Rod, love what you've done with the place. Looks a little different than the last time we were here. How are things going?
Well, we're under construction, as you can see. Behind those plastic drapes over behind the fans and behind us, a lot of work's going on and in preparing for the season. We've renovated or demolished the clubs and the suites. All those club seats are out, and we're renovating those spaces. We're renovating the corner lounge. The video boards are down and gone. They'll be replaced by ones about 3 times the size of those that we took down. All of our speakers that didn't work are down, and the first array of speakers that will work went up right behind me today. So we've made a lot of progress, but roughly 4 months from next week we'll be having our first preseason game here, so a lot to get done between now and then.
And just to be clear, because there's a lot of folks here that weren't here when we had the initial rollout of your plans, there aren't a lot of places in this building that you're not improving. I mean, it's a massive overhaul.
Every square inch of club and suite space is being redone. All new video boards. The Wi-Fi has been improved. Fixed. How about fixed? New speakers. The new corner lounge. What we haven't really talked too much about, but you might have seen on the website, is both of the columns, the Pepsi column and the Ford column, are going to be wrapped in LED lights, so we'll be able to use those for replays and animations. All new video board runners around the stadium. It's going to be quite a project.
Hey, Bob, when we talked last year and we had this event last year, you were just hitting the ground running. How is this offseason different after having spent a regular season here in Detroit?
Yeah, this is it's a lot different this year for sure. We have a great staff that I was able to put together last offseason, and just working through 12 months of getting ready for this draft. Last year I got here in January and I had some background when I was with my previous team, but to have my scouting staff in place and our systems in place of how to evaluate the players has been a really great thing to see evolve. And it started back in May of last year when we started evaluations for this draft. So I feel we're in a really good place. Still got 2 weeks to go, and we're excited to add some talent to the team.
And that definitely also overlaps into the coaching staff as well, because that relationship between your staff, Bob and his staff, it's as important as it gets.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Bob's done a great job of utilizing everyone just in terms of the evaluation process. Guys have been on the road at pro days. We've been kind of talking through each of the prospects by position and things of that nature. And it certainly does, I think, help everybody when the coaches are all involved in it, as well as the scouts. He gets a lot of different information that he can kind of filter through so we can make a real good, sound decision.
We know Rod has spent much of his offseason in a hard hat. In terms of yours, we're going to get to some of the specifics, Bob, but just a general overview of the offseason so far.
Yeah, the offseason has been productive. I think we made some good additions in free agency, which, we improved the offensive line. I think, thanks. it was an area that we knew we had a couple of free agents that were going to be up at the end of the season. So we had to make some contingency plans if we weren't able to bring those guys back. And I think with the additions of Rick Wagner and TJ Lang, they'll help to solidify the offensive line.
Coach, let me swing it to you on the thought of that offensive line. You've got two veterans that have really proven what they can do in this league on the right side of that line now.
Yeah, that's going to help us a tremendous amount. One of the things that I think anytime you add talent but also experience, it's going to help you. These are two guys that know what winning's all about. They're tough, hard-nosed competitors, and it should equate to a better running game. We keep our backs healthy, and it's going to help us move the ball on the ground.
Yeah, no question. And along those lines, how does that change what you can do offensively and what the playbook and how wide open it is for Jim Bob if, in fact, you can get that running game going the way you want to?
Yeah, I think even more so than Jim Bob, how about Matthew? A running game is a quarterback's best friend. The things that we'll do from an offensive standpoint will just allow us, I think, to certainly run it more frequently, which will help us all the way around. Not only our offense in terms of play actions, our offense in terms of certainly ball control, but also our defense and keeping them off the field, as well as our kicking game in terms of field position. So I think it helps all the way across the board.
You mentioned free agency, Bob, and the things that you've been able to do. We have a question from Parker from Bloomfield Hills who asks, is your draft strategy, what is it this year? Are there specific priorities? And I would add to that, how much of that is shaped by what you've been able to do so far in free agency?
Yeah, it all kind of works together. Free agency is an unknown, so you go into free agency with a plan, and luckily for us, part of our plan was able to be accomplished. So once you get through free agency and you really hone in for the last month or so of draft prep, you can kind of look at your needs, look at your depth chart, and see, all right, what are the positions we want to address in the draft? And it's the draft's a hard thing. I mean, I don't know who's going to be there at number 21. So we have to have all our bases covered, whether that's an offensive player, whether that's a defensive player, anybody that can help our football team and help our current players do their jobs better. That's what we're trying to do in the draft. I can't give you a specific position. I wish I could, but we're going to get our team better. I'll promise everybody here that.
I know when it comes to the topics these guys are talking about, it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of travel. Rod, as I come back to you, I was talking to some of the people about what's going on here. This is a 24-hour-a-day thing that you have workers inside of Ford Field getting this ready. And just so people understand, I believe it's Baltimore and Carolina are taking on somewhat comparable plans, but doing it over several years. You're doing it in what, 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months. We wanted to get it done so that we only had to close the facility for one summer season, and so that our fans, when they come back in the fall, it's a completely brand new Ford Field, and it's not something we do over a couple years. We bit off a big project, but I'm confident that we're on the right path. We're on our timetable, and we're going to get it done.
All right, question here from Mario in Roseville. For you, Coach, since Calvin Johnson's retirement, do you think the other wide receivers have upped their game?
Well, I think, without question, Golden's played well. I think Marvin really started the season off hot and really going to continue on. I think you'll see him get better and better. I think what you've seen, not necessarily they stepped up their game, because Golden's always been productive. The first year he got here, he caught 99 balls, and he's been up there somewhere around the 80 mark every single year. But I do think there are a lot more of them getting a lot more opportunities, and the ball gets spread around a little bit more. I think the last couple of years we've had several guys over 60 catches, so I think you're seeing just a little bit more of the spreading around of the ball to different options, and I think that's what makes our offense obviously more potent.
Question for Bob Quinn. This one comes from M. Messmer from Cary, Ohio. Great to have you make the trip. 1 year in as Lions general manager, how do you personally grade your job performance, and what do you think you're going to do to improve on that great start?
First off, I don't think it's a great start because we didn't accomplish the goals that we had set out last year. So I think that's the first thing I'd like to say. And secondly, I don't know if I can put a grade on myself. That's kind of hard. I think that's for Mrs. Ford to do. But I think I'm satisfied with where the team is at now. But I think we have a lot of work to do to kind of accomplish the bigger and better goals that we all have sitting up here today.
But along those lines, you had 8 draft picks who played a lot of snaps for you last year. That's pretty unusual.
Yeah, it was. I mean, listen, it was a good draft. I think the way we look at our draft is we look 2 years of NFL experience. So after this year, I think we'll have a really, really good evaluation of last year's draft. It started off good. All 8 of those 10 guys are in a really good place to contribute, and the other 2 guys are as well. So I think after this season, I'll look back and say, okay, that's how the first year's draft went. How can I improve going forward?
Is that alluding to sometimes that it's not always a straight line, that sometimes guys dip? You want to see, as the league gets tape on them and figures them out, how they adapt.
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. Sometimes when rookies come in, they play for different reasons. Some of them play because they're better than the guys in front of them. Sometimes they play because of injuries. It's a good thing that we had that many young players play last year. That bodes well for the future. But I'd say, the way I always evaluate it is 2 years removed from the draft.
And if you look, Coach, we talked about the right side of that offensive line, left side of that offensive line. You had 2 rookies playing last year. And that's a tough spot to throw them into. But they seem to acquit themselves very well. Give me your thoughts on them coming off of season 1 into season 2. And let me throw Joe Dahl in there as well, because I think he's another guy that's going to figure into your mix at some point.
I think, there's no question Graham certainly stepped in and did a really nice job for us. And Taylor Decker has been very good from the start. It's highly unusual for a rookie to come in, and he wasn't perfect, but he played extremely well. He's a talented guy. He has the right kind of attitude. He works at it. And Joe Dahl, it's going to be a good mix of guys over there. Lakin Tomlinson within that mix as well. That should give us some really good competition, and I think you'll see them get better and better.
Hey, Rod, I got one here. Can Ford Field be open 2.5 hours before kickoff to have more time to enjoy the new renovations? That's from Gene Jones in Sterling Heights. 36 years seniority he's written on here.
I don't know, Joe. We try and open as early as we can in different parts of the stadium. So I hate to say I'm going to table that, but I'll maybe talk to our folks about whether we can do that or not. One of the things that we did want to do this year, and I think it did pay off, is get people into the building as early as we can. And we want to continue to do that next year because we want the stadium full when the game starts.
Yes.
Because the best thing that the fans can do is be making this place a loud, difficult place to play for our players.
Yep.
And the quicker we can get them into the stadium, the better for not only the fans, but for the players who are running out here.
Absolutely.
Exactly, yes. Woo!
Coach, question here from one of our young fans. Joe Sanders wants to know who you think will be the biggest competition this year.
Well, that's every game for us. No matter who we're playing, it's hard to win a game. But when you think about it this year, I think we have the AFC North and we have the NFC South sprinkled in there. I think we also have Arizona and the Giants. So it's going to be a really, really great schedule actually. And what our guys have to do is really focus in on the little things in terms of our preparation, getting ready. They report next Monday, so our off-season program begins. So I'm excited about getting those guys back and getting us ready and revved up for the start of the season.
Competition's a word that I know you've used a lot in terms of the depth that you want to build, Bob, and what you want to do with this roster. And that's as you continue to add players through the draft, through free agency, it's about creating a mix, it's about creating a buffer for injuries, and it's about the competition that makes guys better and gives you the best 53 you can get.
Yeah, it's not always the best 53. It's the right 53 to create the needed depth that we need through the season. As the fans know, you see guys go on and off our roster almost weekly during the season because of injuries or because of practice squad transactions, trades. So we're always continually trying to build that depth. And this time of year, it's on the 90-man roster. And that, back into the season, we get our 53 plus our practice squad. So we try to get the right 53 and the right mix of veteran players, the right mix of young players. So we have that depth come November and December when the games matter even more.
That's kind of your driving force. I've brought this up to you before. It's a line that you had that I'll always remember. You want the best 53 every single day. When you wake up, you're trying to make sure that's what you have on your roster.
Yeah, that's right.
And 90 now.
Yeah, it's we have I think 68 or 9 players on the roster. As we stand here today, we have 8 draft picks that we have 2, 1 in each of the first 5 rounds, 2 in the 6th round, 1 in the 7th round, and then we'll add a number of undrafted rookie free agents after the draft, and we'll continually make roster moves all through the summer. You guys, I know you guys are following, so stay tuned.
The question that this comes up about big events, and obviously you're doing a lot of renovations here that's going to make Ford Field even more desirable. The question here is about another Super Bowl coming back to Detroit.
I would love to do that, and I've indicated as much to the league that the next time that Super Bowl bids are going to be considered, which I think may start in the fall, that Detroit wants to be considered in that mix. I've also said I think it's going to be a very competitive process. The next 4 Super Bowls have been awarded. There's new stadiums that are part of that group. There's stadiums that were built recently that have had Super Bowls that will be back trying to get the next one. But I think with what we're doing to Ford Field and all the things that are going to happen between now and have happened recently in the city of Detroit, it would be great to showcase Detroit to the world as a new renovated Detroit and a new renovated Ford Field.
Interesting question, Bob, and it kind of goes to what we were talking about a moment ago and whether or not it enters into your thinking. It comes from Nick from Oxford, who's asking about your roster and how much you build it in the context of the teams that you compete against within your division.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it definitely factors into some of the decision-making process, because really the easiest way and the most efficient way to make the playoffs is win your division. So if we can beat the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings on a consistent basis, that's going to be our easiest path to make the playoffs on a consistent year in and year out basis, which is our goal. I would say that you can't always make every decision to beat Aaron Rodgers or exactly. Or to stand up to the Minnesota Vikings pass rush. All the teams in our division have their strengths, and we try to build our team to compete against everybody on our schedule. But to answer the question, yes, that does come into play.
This goes to Bob and Jim. Coach, I'll throw it over to you first. What NFL rule changes did you like this offseason? Would you like to see anything else change that comes from Drew and Northville? Is there anything that jumped out at you?
There are a lot of rule changes, and a lot of them were made due to player safety, like, for example, no more leaping and that kind of thing, to make certain that we keep some of those injuries down, because we haven't had any yet, but some of them, if you saw some of the falls that they made after the attempt, some of them are obviously puts players in a pretty vulnerable position. So they eliminated that, but one of the things I think that I'm not one to complain a whole lot about stuff, rules. I think you go out and win, you don't complain, you find a way to get it done, but I think they're doing a better job of allowing in the officiating area, allowing just a few more eyes on the plays that are being called and made, and a few more judgments to be made, just in terms of allowing New York to be involved in some of the decisions. So I think that's going to be a good thing.
And leave the flags on the ground when they actually hit the ground. That'd be a good start. Well,
Yes.
Did anybody had a feeling on the Redskins had that crazy suggestion about on the kickoff, if it sails through the uprights, it goes to the 20 instead of the 25?
They took it off the table.
No go? I thought I kind of like that. Maybe I'm a little different in the minority there. Hey, Coach, why did Kerry Hyder create such a name for himself on the field last year? Nick in Oxford again wants to know that.
Say that again. Why did he
Kerry Hyder, how was he able to create such a name for himself last year with what he did?
Yeah, one of the things I think that about Kerry is he came in with the right attitude. When he initially came to us, he was playing inside, and he was a guy that maybe was not quite as big as you'd like to see him. When Bob came, one of the few things that we did, we sat down and we talked about every single guy on our roster, and he was one that we just kept talking about because he had all the intangibles. He worked extremely hard. He hustled. He never stopped. He had a knack. He was just slippery enough to give all of our linemen problems every single day as he worked against us on the practice squad. And so what we decided at that time is to have him train trim down, lose some pounds. Maybe it's his more natural weight and moving to the outside and see if he can do something there. Because of his attitude, the way in which he approaches the game, he certainly came in and certainly made some things happen for us, particularly with a number of sacks early in the year. So, and I really do think that he's going to keep getting better. I mean, I think he's just kind of scratched the surface. He fights and he scratches and he digs, and he makes improvement constantly. So I'm anticipating he's even going to be better.
When you looked at the defense last year by the numbers, and Bob, you alluded to this at your postseason press conference, you saw a high quarterback rating, a high completion percentage, and you saw also a high third down. How much of that do you think is making the quarterbacks a little more uncomfortable, more consistent pass rush, making sure that they don't have time back there to go where they ultimately want to go?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. You know, I think one of the things, number one, what we want to be able to do is keep them out of the end zone. That's number one. You look at your scoring defense, first and foremost. And sometimes the way in which this league is devised, rules are devised, they're going to move the ball on you some. But I do think there's no question about it. Our number one thing that we want to do is obviously keep them from scoring, but we want to stop the run. If we can stop them, the run, slow them down, make them throw the ball a little bit more frequently, and turn some of our pass rushers loose, I think we're going to be better off. But I do think it's that pressure plus coverage is what makes a difference.
Bob, how much does a healthy Ziggy Ansah, which I don't know if you had for 98% of last season, how much does that change that dynamic?
Oh, that would be a huge dynamic to help out the pass rush. You know, and I agree, Ziggy probably was not healthy much of the season. He's already started training. He was actually in the facility this week, starting to get ready for next year. So I think when you have Ziggy, you have Kerry Hyder, you have a new guy, Cornelius Washington. We were able to bring Armani Bryant back. We bring Zettel back on his second year, so he should be improved. And then we have some guys on the inside that can really rush and push the pocket. You know, we're hoping that the pass rush is improved. We can get closer to the quarterback, and that will, in turn, help the coverage.
Hill is a guy that has done some of that in his career as well, has gotten to the quarterback. You mentioned a couple of the defensive linemen you've sold. Just kind of give us a thumbnail on Hill, Washington, and Spence.
Yeah. Akeem Spence, first off, came from Tampa. He was University of Illinois 4 years ago. We really think he's a really good scheme fit for what we do and how we play our front under Chris Kasurek and in Terrell Austin. He's a guy we kind of had our eye on early on in the free agent process, and we were able to come to an agreement, so that's really going to help. The other guy, Jordan Hill, he's a guy that's bounced around to a number of teams, but when he was healthy in the 2015 season, he had, I think, 4.5 or 5 sacks. So he's kind of an under-the-radar type of guy that we're really, really excited to have in the mix. And lastly, Cornelius Washington. Funny, Cornelius Washington was a guy for Chicago who really had trouble getting on the field his first 4 years. And we had trouble blocking him this year. When he finally got in, they moved him inside to 3 technique, defensive tackle. And he really created a lot of problems as an inside pass rusher. And Coach Kasurek actually had some experience with him at the Senior Bowl 4 years ago. And he really fits our description of what we want as a defensive end. And then on third down, moving inside to rush over the guard and centers.
You mentioned something there right at the top of that answer about guy fitting your scheme. Is that one of the most difficult things about NFL free agency? People love flash, spending money, bringing guys in, but it seems every year you get a high number of people that did great for somebody else, not so good for the team that they signed for.
That's exactly 100% right. So it's a thing where we study that long and hard, and Jim will attest this. We have long conversations with our position coaches. You know, free agency starts with the scouts running reports and evaluations during the season. Once our season's over, myself, Jim, and the position coaches really delve into it, and we have to have long conversations about, okay, we're going to invest on this player. How does he fit into our scheme? Because you're exactly right. There's many guys every year that change teams and they change schemes, and they're not as productive. So we feel confident the guys we went out and signed this year fit well into our defensive scheme.
Hey, Rod, Anthony from Okemos would like to know hey, there you go. What went into the decision to remove the black from the color scheme, and then thank you for returning to the Honolulu blue and silver? So apparently he's a fan.
Well, when I first